So this is, I mean, I wrote this. This is for CCAC's AP2, but I mean the much more detail than I went into there. But this is really what I'm lecturing about, and it's not a bad idea to take a look at it. I spent quite a bit of time on this handout, and even though we're going to probably go into a lot of different things, there is a ton on this, and I'll update it as we go along. So I would suggest a word to the wise is usually sufficient. There's a lot of information here, so please use it. Okay, that's number one on the hit parade. Number two, we'll pick up where we left off, and we left off with this. So there, all of these are out there, and we left off here, and basically exploring inflammation a little bit, which we talk about all the time when we're talking about these things. I thought you were online. No, you can't be in two places at once. All right, it's all right. Take a couple of deep breaths. We're happy you're here. Nevertheless, so this is really to understand why it comes in that order. And so, and it, really, I'm having a day. You're terrible. No, both of you. Disappear. I mean, it's like high school. I have to separate you. What? I know where I am very familiar with the craft store. Yeah. I mean, I give up. What if I really need and like I can't drive to Robinson? You really need what? Well, there's a place to go. I mean, normally it would be Joanne Fabrics. There's one in Robinson that used to be there, then it closed. That really upset my wife and I because we sold a lot of yarn on Amazon. To where? Yeah, the ice. Yeah, for sure. You know, there's one also here. I didn't know that, but I'm glad to be familiar with it. So if you go past the Walmart light and then turn right, it's right up that road. Cool. My sister-in-law lives there, all the way down that road. Yeah, that's whatever. That's Moon Clinton Road. Yeah, that's where they're. Yeah, they just keep going and going. They live, along that road someplace. I couldn't. I've only been. I think I only passed the house a couple of times. Nevertheless, so we start off basically whenever there's damage, and damage doesn't have to be visible or you have to cut or scrape yourself, though that's certainly included. Like I said, sprained ankle, cells are disrupted. When cells are disrupted, whether on the exterior or the interior, no matter what the degree, they're going to release chemicals. Principally, it's going to start with a cell burst or release lysosomes pop open, lysozyme, other enzymes come out, and that kind of starts the cycle. And the inflammatory chemicals that eventually get triggered are going to produce vasodilation, principally histamine, widening of blood vessels. They're going to alter, the chemical is going to alter vascular permeability, meaning the capillaries mechanisms are going to be in place by those chemicals to enable white blood cells to leave the capillaries very actively and basically are drawn by a process which you should be familiar with called chemotaxis. Basically, attraction of those cells by way of chemicals. The chemicals diffuse to the area, they contact receptors on those white blood cells, and the white blood cells are mobilized in that direction. Remember, they basically function by amoeboid motion more than anything else. Okay, and so it mobilizes those phagocytes in there. So they're released into that extracellular fluid as I've described. And what happens, whether it's the tissue or other immunological cells in the area, they facilitate basically the release of histamine. Histamine is within those mast cells. Those are basically the basophils that have left. They've migrated out originally. They have already left the circulation and become stationed in different areas. Again, in lucerabular connective tissue, we see all of these. In certain areas, we see a greater abundance of mast cells in the upper respiratory area. That's why, unfortunately, people can get asthma and anaphylaxis, but we have them normally there. It's a matter of how they're triggered as to why someone is predisposed to more severe or significant allergic reactions. And indeed, this is the chapter we talk about allergies, and we talk about anaphylactic shock, and we talk about different severe immunological reactions, and understand now the damage that has been done by most viruses, or that it will be done by viruses that impact you, are throughout your immune system. Bacteria typically work through toxins. Sometimes they work through the immune system. Viruses typically work through the immune system. So a lot of, if you want to think about it in the context you all folks have, is COVID. We understand now fairly well what the original COVID-19 first presentation back when we had to close things down, and you guys were in high school, I assume. Okay, right? What year we got you guys in? 10th, 11th, 2020? Hmm? Going into junior year. So you would have been sophomore. Most of you, I think, would have been that way. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Basically everything happened. The best thing about COVID, we sold more stuff online than you could shake a stick at. Everybody bought online. The good old days. Every little kid would have wanted to be in our house. Squishmallows everywhere. You don't like squishmallows? You have some at home. You have some at home on the bed. My kind of girl. We have such a supply. We bring them every time we visit my grandkids. We bring them. So, nevertheless, histamine is the critical piece. Understand that it's not the only ones. Kinins, and there's normally the one you hear the most about is called bradykinin. Prostaglandins, which are local hormonal agents. We look at them in this. Collectively, we call them cytokines. And a lot of times, if they're pathogens like bacteria or virus, they will begin to trigger these plasma and tissue fluid agents that are always there, proteins called complement. And what do? They vasodilate the small arterioles. They induce the capillaries to become leaky, meaning basically those little intercellular clefts are enlarged and phagocytes come to the area. And again, you can read through this and see exactly what they do. It associates page numbers, so you don't have to know. I mean, if you just have an idea of what the physiological effects are, I think that's adequate. To summarize it, vasodilation comes first. So remember, rubor, calor, tumor, dolor. Rubor and calor. The first thing, for instance, what I look for as a surgeon postoperatively when I'm worried about infection is I want to see when someone's injured, I want to see it get red and I want to feel it to be warm. Postoperatively, I don't want to see those. We look for redness and warmth that would be unexpected to an unexpected degree is immediately postoperative. So we're already even though which basically you're going to induce inflammation, you want to control it, okay, and limit it. So vasodilation causes hyperemia, increased circulation, blood is there, and then we get the redness and the heat, the rubor and the calor. And then we get fluid, because the capillaries is not just cells, we call it an exudate, something that exudes clotting factors, antibodies, swelling, localized swelling, accumulation of fluid, edema, and that pushes on nerve endings. So here's the tumor and here's the dolor, because the the little nerve endings are sensitive to that, and they're all over the place. Not every tissue has an abundance of pain fibers, but many of them do. So that's sort of the way it occurs. Now, pain, variety of other things, toxins can lead to some bacterial infections are worse. Okay, they can induce or be accompanied by various kinds of local mediators. But why is the fluid a good idea? This addition of fluid, extra fluid, takes the foreign material, pushes it into the lymph vessels. Remember, they're always like little tiny openings in tissue, and they really rely on fluid levels to push materials in. Okay, clotting factors, basically, as when we look at the clotting cascade in depth in lab on Monday and then start hard. I believe that's what we're working on Monday. And the clotting factors, as you will see, create the scaffolding that we call a clot, isolates the areas. And really, we're trying to, well, it's very scientific, It's very logical if you think what your body's trying to do under normal circumstances. It's trying to isolate the problem, wall it off, and make sure that there's enough materials to repair it in that area already. Make sense? Should. And so phagocytes play a role, obviously. Again, if there's pathogens, it activates this thing called complement. We'll look at that briefly. And depending on the severity. Help you? Oh, we could come on if you could find. Okay, you're no problem at all. Believe me, we need the diversion. They're tired of listening to me. Where's your running mate? Oh, she's in trouble.
I was in the woods.
I don't. Please. I don't want to hear the details. Okay, what happens in the woods stays in the woods. Let's not get it too detailed. Forgive me, I'm trying. You guys need to be a little bit more. Make it seem like you're looking at me. It's okay. You don't have. I don't want to look at me. My wife certainly doesn't. See, the first thing, the only humor you appreciate is self-deprecating humor, and I only have so much of it to share. And think how much fun we. I mean, I can't make fun of Jenna because for whatever reason she's not here. Yeah, I'm telling you, slacker. First order.
She said to tell you that she jumped off of a building.
I hope it wasn't a tall building, but that's another story. Very old joke. It's like the great Mel Brooks, nearly 100 years old. In 1967, surprise, he won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay for a wonderful movie that became a very successful Broadway show, called The Producers. Fabulous. Okay. Crazy idea that he had. And he said, and he came up here, he says, he was so unprepared, he says, let me just tell you what I have in my heart. And he goes, right in front of all over TV, da-thump, 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 da-thump. That was his acceptance speech. People don't, you can come up with good stuff. It was better if you saw it live. None of you were around to see it live. Possibly Jenna, but she's not here. Moving on. So, white blood cells gobble stuff up. White blood cells, leukocytosis. So, and there's factors that draw them in. So, what happens, maybe you've seen this before. Effectively, what happens, those chemicals impact little receptors in the membrane surrounding the capillaries. And it causes proteins, basically, it strikes them on the exterior and affects little proteins on the interior. In blood flow, white blood cells are slow. Red cells are in the middle of the stream. On the periphery, close to the walls, are white cells. So effectively what happens, these tiny proteins change shape, and it's easy, as there's an increased amount of white blood cells, to latch onto them. That basically is what enables, we call that margination. Okay, so what happens, the endothelial cells project into the area, okay, and effectively they're a cell adhesion molecule who changes, let's say, from a bent shape to a straight shape. More white blood cells come in contact, they latch onto them, and effectively, chemically, they undergo a process called diapedesis. And what happens, the white blood cells with the chemical interaction are able to literally squeeze through the cracks, which are slightly larger. That's what diapedesis is. It's like in the classroom, and all of a sudden, anywhere, some idiot parks next to you in your car, you can barely open the door and slide in. You know how that is. You just want to open that door like, oh, did you get a ding out of that? We don't want to do that because someone will do it to you. But you know what I mean? You got to slide into the car. Don't tell me you haven't thought about doing that. Particularly me when I weigh 280 pounds. It's not a lot of fun having to crawl in through the side door or whatever. What? Yeah, I mean, you want to just bang that bad boy in. Nothing. See, I use real life examples. Would anybody like to adopt a white cat who's very cute, who insists now that the weather's nice, he's making up for lost time. 4:30 in the morning, he demands to go out. Then he wants to come back in an hour later. Then he demands to go out. Then he demands to come in. You have how many cats? Hey, it's a party. And enlighten me. I'm afraid he's going to get marked up.
No.
I have a VW. A T-Gon. I have a T-Gon. What are my parks? Is there somebody that parks illegally? Oh no.
Yesterday I parked, I have one class on Thursday. I parked, went to my truck after it was there for like 2 hours to find the straight on the front.
Oh shoot.
It's dented on the door and on the door.
Oh man. Do they have surveillance video here?
Cop showed up and said it happens all the time and that best you can do is write a report.
Yeah, write a report for your insurance. And you get dinged for the deductible. Oh, that sucks.
Well, they left the piece of their buffer on my truck.
It was nice of them.
They scratched it so hard it scraped the piece of
Oh, what a
plastic off their bumper. I have
you-
evidence.
if you had surveillance video, but I know it's not. It's a campus like this is very hard to have cameras. They have a few, but you can't.
Yeah, this plastic piece has paint on it. I think it's super.
Really?
I found one
No, I got a
earlier,
T-Gon.
and I held this up to it. I'm like, that color matches almost perfect.
I have.
Like if you factor in a different paint batch.
No, I had the last two cars I had were Foresters, and I had this T-Gon for the last couple of years. So it's black, if you're wondering, and very old. I don't get rid of a car till I was like 250,000 miles.
You traded in then?
What?
You traded in?
No, let it deceased. Gone, gonzo. See you later. Somebody take it. Give me $500 and I'll get something new. Chemotaxis. We know what that is. Coming toward it, there's a variety of agents, and then we're going to see the batting order of what arrives first, and then after. In general, the monocytes arrive later because they're the cleanup crew. Again, typically neutrophils are first on the scene more often than not, and then because they're really the ones designed for the shock troops coming in for attack. And again, if it's a viral problem, then the lymphocytes are going to be summoned to the area. If it's an allergy, we see eosinophils and basophils activated and come to the area. And eventually the monocytes, because they're going to convert to macrophages significantly later. Okay? And they're replacing all the things that are dying. When people have such a misunderstanding of what pus is all dead stuff. Dead cells, tissue fluid, dead bacteria, dead microorganisms. I mean, and people in medicine, they culture the pus, which is very unreliable. It's in the wound where you're looking for bacteria. You're looking to see what the causative organism is. You have to understand my context. I had a very extensive background in traumatology, very extensive. As I was saying, when I watch The Pit on TV, it's like we did that. Not the sophistication of today, but people getting sick and injured, or hasn't changed over the course of time. And this is sort of a generic view of what happens with some kind of trauma, bacteria on it, and getting an idea of it triggering your defenses, and you can follow that kind of thing. And then this is just kind of, and you can go through that as easily as I can look at it. Here's the pus thing: dead white blood cells, tissue cells, more often dead than living. Pus is inherently lazy, meaning when it's produced, it follows the path of least resistance. If it's close to the surface, it eventually will come to a head and open up. Like most of you have had a pustule, typically from your age group, typically like an acne pustule or something like that. We want it to come to the surface. A lot of the medicines are designed to enhance that ability. The trouble is when it's too deep, it starts to spread. Tissue planes, whenever we did dissections, sometimes you might remember how once you got in, how things would separate once you got into a plane. Basically, it's loose connective tissue. Infections fly along it. We call them tissue planes. So we're very watchful when things like that happen. So an abscess, basically, when it gets walled off, and those have to be opened that are there. That's what they're talking about. And this is what I was telling you about with tuberculosis a little bit. White blood cells gobble it up. And what happens, and I don't know if I told you, or maybe the micro classes or both. So effectively, it's hiding inside of a white blood cell, replicating, and other white blood cells come to the party in an effort to wall it off, and they form a big thing called a granuloma. What happens is those granulomas create almost a unique environment inside that changes things, and it really becomes more destructive than desirable in your lungs, and eventually it will harden and calcify. And so, an anatomist, when somebody had TB, and they called it consumption because it went to all their organs. What happens is they feel the lung and they have these hard bumps. Well, they must have little pieces of bone. Remember, tuberosities, tubercles, trochanters, all those wonderful anatomy names. That's where the name tuberculosis. The tubercle was this hard nodule. Trouble is, inside the middle of it was like a soft core with bacteria, and they would rupture. And because in the lung there's so many blood vessels, it would get into the bloodstream and splatter all over the body. And so, in no organ can it get it in bone, get it in kidney, get it elsewhere, get it to your brain, and that's when disseminated tuberculosis. And that was one of the great killers. It's not by any means gone away. And so, and if you see historically, or if you watch a period piece, and they do so many of them now. Oh, she died or he died of consumption. That's you'll hear that. Okay, and then someone say, "Oh, you mean tuberculosis?" Yes.
So can an abscess have pus in it? Like, what is the walling off sacrum? Like, what does that mean?
Walling off is generally denser connective tissue fibers that are keeping it from going to the surface and
So
basically.
an abscess will have pus in it, but it's
Oh,
not
yes.
allowing the pus to go.
It's not allowing the pus to go out, which is desirable. And if it opens up, it's going to spread in that direction.
So the collagen fibers are what's keeping it.
Holding it in, correct. So a lot of other things we have. We have antimicrobial proteins that are there. They were genetically there. The ones we deal a lot with are inherently interferons. Maybe you learned about this in micro when you learned about viruses. When one of our cells is attacked by a virus, typically it releases a chemical called an interferon. Basically, it sends signals to neighboring cells and hardens their defenses, alters their receptors so they won't get infected by it. So, and that was one of the early treatments for various viral diseases like hepatitis C. We made interferon in the lab because it's a protein. It was a very, very harsh treatment. Harsh, a lot of side effects. And these complement proteins. So these are the immune modulators. They secrete these interferons to basically, in the neighborhood, it's like you get one of those bulletins. Oh, lock your doors. There's an escaped convict that we found in the area. You might get that on a generic message on your phone. From the something like that would happen. So effectively, that's that production that neighbors will stimulate production of proteins that block the entry. And you can see they have different ones that are there. Not you have to know these at this point in time. Alpha and beta. Okay. And as you can see, they also activate natural killer cells, which are typically go after viruses that have invaded cells. We'll get into that more. This is interferon gamma. Okay. Widespread effects. Okay. Activates NK cells, indirectly fight cancer. This is the one that was used originally to treat a lot of these disorders. As science has gone on, we've gotten a lot more specific. I remember a case by a gal I'm going to tell you, 06, 20 years ago, in one of my micro classes at Chatham. She's like, I can't really do a whole lot today. I said, well, what's up? She goes, well, I was exposed to hepatitis C. They're treating me with this interferon. when they give me with the treatment, she says I can hardly move, and she was very, very, very petite, skinny. Just there wasn't a whole lot of girl there, so to speak. And I mean, it's a her, you know, I can't eat, I can't drink anything, that kind of stuff. So it really was a very, very harsh treatment. I didn't know a lot about it. That were there. I don't, and this is the kind of thing that, and now we have, you know, now we have selected antivirals to deal with hepatitis C. We have for warts, we have for genital warts. Now we have, you know, immunizations prior that you can get earlier in life. MS, we're looking at a whole lot of different agents. They're better biologicals today, and we'll talk about some of that in this unit, just to give you an idea. So this is what they're showing you in this mechanism, how they work from host cell 1, basically triggering interferon, it gets received, and host cell 2 can cause changes because of that. And you can look through the slide sequence that's there. Complement is interesting. They're, like most things in the bloodstream, inactive. They become activated. There's a whole lot of them, and they play an important role in enhancing the inflammatory respect, particularly if it's a bacterial infection. And so it plays a role. And again, this is a signaling mechanism between both your innate and adaptive defenses. It's a whole coordinated system. We look at it when I present it individually as 3 levels. The reality is these are chemical agents that serve as the arms of communication between the systems. And so there's different pathways. Okay. And you don't have to know, I mean, if you were going to medical school, if you're doing graduate work on this area, then you go into the 3 different pathways, the lectin, the classical, and the alternative pathway. I'm not having anybody do that. There's a whole, I mean, you can go crazy with this stuff that are there. And so but they play different roles. And effectively, you can see what happens. They enhance inflammation. This is the bottom line. They enhance opsonization. And what they do is these proteins, what are called these membrane attack complexes, are very interesting. They're one of the ways that our immune system works. We insert proteins. It's almost like we're going to release a chemical that's going to attack the interior of the cell. But the exterior of the cell makes it hard to get through. So by inserting, it's like we're punching holes in it, and we're going to insert the chemical agents in there. To me, that's immensely clever for a single cell, for a cell to do in your body. Just the way these things work. It's amazing to me how it mirrors things that we do in life, trying to get things. It's just sort of fascinating. As little kids, when you get like trying to think of the right analogy. Kids would bring they'd get a little like a little like a hamster, and they put it in a box and you poke holes in it so it have air. We didn't have those like neat transporting cages that when you take one of your many cats or to the vet, that type of thing. I hate doing that. The car is one continuous meowathon. They are not happy cat campers. The dog's like, oh, we're going buys. I'm so happy.
My cat rides in the car.
Really?
So he's not even a cat. He's just a dog.
Well, the dog is just is not a cat person. You get
My cat is not a dog person.
I understand that. My cat either.
He makes fun of my dog.
Well, one of our cats, the white one, was abused by a dog when we got him. If somebody tells you I'm fostering a cat, could you watch it? Who's just not getting along with my other cats? Don't do it, because you're going to end up adopting it. That's what happened to this cat. All of a sudden, the cat, I knew I was going to have, my wife goes, he's such a nice cat. Here we go. Yeah, get another litter box, bring one into the family. What's that? Oh, I know what they are. Fever. Not everything produces fevers. Okay? It depends on the agent. For instance, a common cold typically not febrile. Okay, strep throat, typically febrile, meaning having a fever. And it's because they secrete pyrogens. Basically, they act on your hypothalamus. And again, think of what it does specifically. But most microorganisms, most bacteria need these metals. So they grab them from areas in the bloodstream when they're circulating, iron and zinc. The liver and spleen hold on to them. And of course, all metabolic reactions are increased. Remember, I drew that on the board. The idea is temperature's your friend up to a certain point. Then systems shut down. And that's really the generic view. Now we enter the realm of the more sophisticated response. Because I have such a sophisticated audience, think of how the fun we're going to have. One freaking line they smile at. Well, everything else I just told you about is a general mechanism that's always on board. If that's not on board, then you have some kind of immunological suppressant disease. You're either taking immunosuppressants because you've had a transplant or you have a autoimmune disease, something bad's going on, or there's something undiagnosed that's going on. This is the other system that's like that. The adaptive system, we don't want to call it into play, though sometimes we have to. And if I had you for micro, you would hear the same thing. It is a numbers game. Okay. What do they want from my life? I get more messages than I need. Effectively, just okay. The adapt. Let me go back to where my train of thought was with regard to that. The adaptive system is basically if that elaborate system we've talked about already isn't sufficient, and so I say I tell all micro, it's a numbers game. We inhale viruses constantly. We inhale bacteria. They're on our bodies all the time. Periodically, one gets in, or a sufficient number gets in. We call the infecting dose. And if that dose gets in, then if it has bypassed the basically your innate defensive and your adaptive defense gets called into it. Okay. So it's very, very specific, not generalized. And it's going to either make antibodies or it's going to make T cells or activate T cells would be a better way to express it, that are specifically designed for that agent. They will travel all over the body, but they will only contact that. So there's little pros and cons because the immune response is system wide. You don't feel particularly good. Okay. It's going all over your body. I mean, that's part of that thing when you get sick and your immune system takes a number of days to ramp up and produce, whether it's the antibodies or the elements, to get this all through your system until it finally gets a handle on what's causing you the problem. In general, it increases the inflammatory response, again, up to a point. In general, it activates complement, which enhances the inflammatory response, opsonization, all of those different things that we looked at before. And the difficulty is this, that first response, this is where your immunological memory comes from. That's why the first time you're exposed to an allergen, you're not going to have an allergic response. The first time you're exposed to a medication, you're not going to have an allergic response. That is the priming dose. And as they say, priming takes time. This information has to be addressed, reacted to, and effectively encoded into your immune system's hard drive. At that point, any subsequent responses will be assuming you're healthy, will happen very, very rapidly. That's the beauty of the system. That's why you get an immunization. That's why, trust me, you all had measles, mumps, rubella, you had MMR immunization. Okay, you have inhaled measles viruses more than once. It's probably the most contagious virus that we know about respiratory, by far. Anybody here have the measles? Don't think so. Because that immunization means if you got enough of an infecting dose, it would have ramped up. You probably said, I don't feel right. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, maybe I got a cold coming on or some kind of bug, and you get better a day or two. That's your immune system, everybody. doing its job. It's not always measles, but it's something that it's been exposed to and it's ramped up to very, very quickly. That's how it works. So, characteristics very specific, all over the place, so it's systemic, and the memory. And again, once that second and any subsequent exposures, assuming the immune system remains intact, will be very aggressive. So we will look at two of them. When we talk about a humoral, means within the body fluids, that is antibodies. Other than that, we look at cellular. And the really, maybe the most important thing is what defines why we have one or the other. If it's a virus or a bacteria, without meaning any microbe, and any of those things are effectively either in fluids or using the exterior of cells as a platform. That will be responded to by antibodies, the humoral system, and the antibodies. The whole idea, and we'll get to it, are the different markers, whether it activates MHC1 or MHC2, you get to all that. You look at it, suffices to add that these are all things that, and I don't want you to think of it as more severe or less severe. These things can be just as deadly as something as cellular immunity. Okay, we respond to not by antibodies, but by typically by what are called cytotoxins. T cells, affectionately called killer T cells. Okay, are for things that have, whether they're virus, bacteria, or microbes that have invaded cells, whether the cells have been altered by tumor, transplantation, transfusion, anything that has actually altered the cell's markers. Not something that's using the cell as a foundation. If it hasn't invaded the cell, it's not much use. But it's inside the cell. And that's the distinction. So tuberculosis, the reason when you have a TB test, you can't read it right away, is it takes cell-mediated immunity. It's going to take 48 to 72 hours for you to accurately read the response. Oh, it's swelled up right away. That's an allergic. That's the distinction. It's a different kind of a system, and you have to be aware of all of these. So there, and it really is the complexity of this. And again, for whatever reason, this is the system that most of the folks who are sitting in your seats over the last too many years I've been teaching this find this difficult. Humoral. Antibodies, they're produced by lymphocytes. We're going to see little antibody factories called plasma cells. Okay? And the antibodies themselves in the plasma travel around, and effectively they hit whatever their target is. Smell might be the wrong term. So whether it's a free-floating virus or it is a cell like a bacteria, basically they will, in some way, shape, or form, neutralize it, immobilize it. You'll see the different things. Cause it to precipitate out of solution, effectively render it in such a way that it's not hurting you, and put a big flag on it. It's like when you put out, I know in our neighborhood, we put a yellow tag that we buy at the township center, the township building, for the garbage people to come if it's a big item. We're marking it for destruction. Take my old cabinet. Take my old bedroom furniture. That's what it's doing. So these are extracellular targets. targets. Cell immunity, the lymphocytes directly target those cells. Okay, they hold them and bond to them directly, punch little holes in them, and release chemicals to destroy them. Okay, they will also do so indirectly by enhancing the inflammatory response. That's where you get to helper T cells, or activating other cells. We're going to get to helper T cells. This is typically the killer or cytotoxic cell. This is the helper cell. And we're going to get to the distinction. The single most important cell, you'll hear me say this again and again, the helper T cell, known as the CD4, before it's activated. And that is the cell, unfortunately, that's targeted by human immunodeficiency virus. So cellular immunity has cellular targets. And I'm sure I'll be providing, when we get into the immunological diseases, a whole lot of information about HIV. I, more than anybody, and I had the same discussion with my classes today, was treating HIV patients and AIDS patients before we had a name for this. We didn't have a name for it until 1981. So of which I've got a lot of information. Substances that can mobilize. Antigen in the old days meant antibody generating. I had this little chat with you for the lab. Nowadays, we have self and non-self antigens. Self antigens are the means of our body's immune system identifying what should be there. Non-self or foreign antigens are potentially can provoke the immunological response. They are the targets of all adaptive immune response, cellular or humoral. Most of them are fairly complex molecules that are not there. It doesn't even have to be a molecule. I mean, it can be carried in by a bacteria, which is an entity, a living entity in and of itself. So either they are complete or they are incomplete. We call the term HAP10, means half antigen. This is typically allergies. I don't know about you, but since the weather warmed up, I'm on a sneeze-a-thon. Okay? I get them all at the spring and fall. Boom, here they go. So effectively, those are things that are too small for your immune system to recognize, that bond to proteins in the interior of whatever system it is, typically respiratory, and all of a sudden become what we call an allergen. Okay? And the determinant, that's the unique sequence. Just like in ABO system, those short chain simple carbohydrates that are there, they are the determinant, is that unique sort of signature that we're going to form either the antibody to or the cell to, because it's got to latch on. It can't see where it's going. Again, it's going to roll over anything that looks like that. But if something looks like that, it's what they latch on to. That's it. We produce tons and tons of them. They roll and run and flow all over the place. When they contact system, they're supposed to grab. It's like going to the buffet and I look for the shrimp cocktail. Okay? Yeah. Shrimp cocktail. I'm grabbing these. See, food analogies work. So, contain antigenic determinants, can be a self-antigen. So, the whole idea, and this is sort of the basis for, and this is when we talk a little bit about immunizations down the road. So they're either complete or incomplete. Complete, the haptens that are bonded to proteins become complete. They have immunogenicity, the ability to stimulate specific lymphocytes, and reactivity, the ability to react with these lymphocytes and cause antibodies or other immunogenic reactions. That's what they have to have. And so even if they're not damaging, that's what happens with, we retain immunogenicity and reactivity without the severity of the side effects or damaging effects, and that's done by modification. I'll talk about that as well. Examples: foreign proteins, complex sugars, fats, many types of things, pollen and microorganisms. The haptens are incomplete by themselves. Okay, these are tiny, but if they attach to a particular existing protein in the body, then there's enough of them to be identified as foreign. So, immune system mounts the attack that is harmful because it attacks self proteins as well as the hapten. These are classic examples. Again, not always the first go round. Maybe you'll buy a new line of makeup, okay, and that's what I mean cosmetics. Maybe you'll use a new soap. And then all of a sudden, the next time you use that, a few days later, all of a sudden you start to break. Well, I didn't break out of the soap before. It takes a certain amount of time. Animal dander, classically. Okay. I mean, a lot of people that unfortunately love animals can't. I mean, we always end up going to visit one of my stepson and his wife and their two little girls. He's super allergic to cats. We got cats, and we'll go into all of those. So I'll leave it there, and we'll start up again with these determinants. See everybody next week for a long Monday.